Next, we have another border property that takes this idea even further. It allows you to use any image you can load onto the web page and clip it out as a border. Now that seems a little bit weird, so let's take a look at the files that we've got to look at for this one. I'm going to go back down to my working files folder, and I have an image in here called star frame. And you can see from the preview over here, it's actually a frame made out of stars on the edges. I'd like to use this as a border. But I want to make sure that this works on a variable size div as well. So let me show you how to load this one in. We'll use our sample div from before, but I'm just going to remove the border radius property, and we're going to work on a border image this time. So I'll just go ahead and type that property name in. Now the first thing we need to know about the border image property is that it currently doesn't work in any Explorer browser. So if you want to use this in your pages, it's best to start with a style that works in Explorer and then build on top of it to add the images for the other browsers. I'll also point out that the base border image property currently only works in the Chrome browser. So for any of the other browsers, you'll have to add in a prefix. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the MOZ prefix since I'm using the Firefox browser. So we'll add -MOZ in front of this one. Next, we want to set up the values for our border image property. And like some of the others we've seen in CSS3, this is going to be a longer one that involves a few different values. So let's start out with the very first value that's required, and that is, what image do you want to put in here? Generally, we refer to that as a source, and you've seen a lot of different ways to do that, but I'm going to show you one brand new way with CSS3 that is now going to be the preferred way to add any external sources into your CSS file, and that is using the URL attribute. This is very similar to our RGB and our RGBA attributes. At least it looks similar. I'll start it off with URL, and we're going to add some parentheses. I'll go ahead and close the parentheses right now, and inside the parentheses, we simply add the path to the source that we want to use, which is our image. Now, our image is sitting in the same folder as our file, so we'll just call out star-frame.png. Now, notice one nice thing about the URL is that we don't have to use quotes around each one of the names of our elements. So it's just one less thing to type and clutter up our pages. Now the next value is referred to as slice, and it basically is saying how much of this image do we want to slice off and act as our border. I've already measured this, and the star's width is about 50 pixels, so I'm going to put 50 pixels in for our slice property. Our next property is similar. It's asking how much of that width we want to use, and I want to use the full thing, so we're going to make that 50 as well. Now a third value is called outset, and it actually allows us to have the image run outside of the border. And just so our border looks nice, I'm going to put it all the way on the outside, so I'll just keep with the 50 settings, and we'll finish that one off. Now our very last value specifies how we want the image to be repeated around the image. Do we want it simply repeated, or we can use the round setting so it will go around the object or around the border? Or we can use a stretch setting, so it will just simply stretch out the image if needed. I'm going to use the round option, and we'll have our setup there for our border image. Now I mentioned at the beginning that it's a good idea to also have a base border setup that you're going to be using, especially for the Internet Explorer browser. In this case here, I need to at least provide a border width setting so that our border image will show up. So let me go up here. And I'm going to use the shorthand border property to specify a base border that will show up in any browser where this image doesn't show. We'll use the border property, and for that shorthand, we need to specify 3 values: the width, the style, and the color. So I'll set up 20 pixels for the width. We'll use solid for the style, and I'll just set the color for red. And remember, that should only show up on browsers where it won't see the image. Now let's see what we've done. I'll just go ahead and save our changes, and let's go back out to our browser and see how it looks. Here we can see immediately that the star graphic was extracted, and it's repeating really nicely all the way around the outside border of this div. You can see that we're only using parts of that graphic, and it's intelligently going and picking out the pieces that we want. And using this kind of code, we can simply go back to our document and change the size of the div. I'm going to make this one twice as wide. We'll save that change. And going back out, you can see that the border just accommodates whatever size div we have.